The US government has recovered several different spacecrafts, each from a different alien civilization. We would not be able to even understand anything. Any device could communicate or send a signal faster than the speed of light. Antimatter propulsion system. And the problem with antimatter is how it's stored. If it connects or gets in close contact with matter, there's going to be an explosion. Scientists can write down on a piece of paper the scientific principles of time travel, exactly how we could travel in time, primarily back in time. They have to build something to test it. That's where the problem is. 𝗍𝗑𝗕𝗦𝗧𝗘 told us about a device that captures time. The device records each event as it happens. The event leaves behind some kind of bio or bi-gravity trace, alien artifacts, what we, the United States government, received from the ETs. Since 1947, when the US government recovered the first extraterrestrial spacecraft, artifacts, devices, communication systems, propulsion technology, and voice communication devices have been recovered. These devices are too advanced for the US government to understand. However, over the years, as our technology increased, we began to understand the basic principles of these devices. Remember, 1947, it was after World War II. Our industrial complex is recovering from the strain that the war put on the United States production system and our technology. And now we have in our possession, in 1947, an alien spacecraft. We couldn't understand much of what was in it. Fortunately, we had a live ET, 𝗍𝗑𝗦𝗬𝗧, who was assisting us in understanding the complexity of that spacecraft. 𝗍𝗑𝗦𝗬𝗧 was able to provide us with a working knowledge of a complex form of communications that was used in the Awaken craft found at Corona, New Mexico. The device, which was codenamed 𝗪𝗧, enabled a signal to be transmitted faster than the speed of light from one point to another. Now remember, this is 1940s. We would not be able to even understand anything. Any device could communicate or send a signal faster than the speed of light. Einstein, in the 20s, wrote papers about it. And his theory is you can't go faster than the speed of light. Now remember, 𝗍𝗑𝗦𝗬𝗧 came from the Zeta Reticuli star group, which was 37.5 light years from Earth. With this communication device that 𝗍𝗑𝗦𝗬𝗧 had, we were able to send a signal from Earth to their home planet, which I'll call Serpil. That only took 60 Earth days. Over the time period when we were testing this, or 𝗍𝗑𝗦𝗬𝗧 was showing us how it worked, it's easier to send a light signal faster than the speed of light than it is to send something of mass, like a spaceship, faster than the speed of light. We also found an energy device in the Corona craft. It was described as follows. The dimensions were 26 centimeters by 17 centimeters by 2.5 centimeters. It weighed 728 grams. US scientists named it the CR, or the crystal rectangle. Over the years, our scientists determined the CR was a particular type of energy device. The CR handled all demands that were placed on it, from a simple 3-volt battery to a city power station. That's right. This box that was clear, almost like plexiglass, that was 26 centimeters by 17 centimeters, could generate enough power in a certain wavelength that could operate a battery or a whole city. How do we explain that? Well, if you stop and think of what our technology was back in the 50s, we couldn't do it. But there were scientists at Los Alamos and Sandia and Lawrence Livermore. Some of these scientists got together and said, I think we can figure this out if we spend a lot of time doing it. And so there were committees, classified committees, and working groups specifically formed to determine how these devices found in the extraterrestrial craft worked, how the energy device worked, how the communications device worked. And of course, our goal was to reverse engineer them. Now, even back in those days, we could measure frequencies. And we could detect that when this CR, crystal rectangle, was working, it was generating frequencies within that frequency range. Now, I'm not gonna go into details of how or why or what the frequency bands were, but viewing the CR through an electron microscope, you would see numerous small squares connected by horizontal wires There was also a fluid inside each square. If you jump to today's technology, you might consider that as some form of zero-point energy. And by time working with Dr. Putoff at the Institute for Advanced Studies, this technology was looked into. The US government has recovered several different spacecrafts, each from a different alien civilization. Each spacecraft had completely different technologies. These are some of the propulsion systems contained in the recovered spacecrafts. The first one is the energy pulse propulsion system. This just isn't understood by US scientists. Antimatter propulsion system. And the problem with antimatter is how it's stored. If it connects or gets in close contact with matter, there's going to be an explosion. So there's ways now that we're experimenting with San Diego National Laboratories to collect antimatter, but we haven't perfected that as a propulsion system yet. The next one is kinetic system oscillating neutron generation. That particular form of propulsion is being experimented with. We know that kinetic energy, if you oscillate it in a particular neutron-rich environment, will produce a great deal of energy, a massive amount of propulsion. Just building one and controlling it is the problem. So there's contractors, US contractors out there that are working on this, trying to perfect the kinetic system oscillating neutron generation system. These types of propulsion systems have been studied for many years, but still US scientists can't perfect them. They understand how they would produce energy, but they just can't understand them. Just like time travel. Scientists can write down on a piece of paper the scientific principles of time travel, exactly how we could travel in time, primarily back in time, and some scientists think we can travel forward in time. You can write it all down, but when they have to build something to test it, that's where the problem is. 𝗍𝗑𝗦𝗧𝗧 told us about a device that captures time. The device records each event as it happens. The event leaves behind some kind of bi-gravity trace. Any event in history leaves some trace. According to scientists and according to 𝗍𝗑𝗦𝗧𝗧, everything that happens leaves some kind of bi-gravity trace, something behind. Now, we haven't been able to capture that, but the 𝗍𝗑𝗦𝗧𝗧 could. Like the infrared trace that humans can leave, according to 𝗍𝗑𝗦𝗧𝗧, this device distinguishes between biomagnetic and biogravitational signals. When we heard about this, of course, this is back in the 50s or late 40s, nobody really understood it. Our scientists thought it was science fiction. Great to hear it, putting it down, writing it down, but trying to understand it, no. Jump ahead to now, today, we're beginning to understand this. We're beginning to understand biomagnetic and biogravitational signals that are being emitted by our brains that leave trace evidence behind. That's probably how we can travel forward or back. Forward, I don't know about. 𝗍𝗑𝗦𝗧𝗧 didn't talk about forward. He just talked about past because we've lived it, we've left something. The device creates a type of crystalline field that is recorded in a device. It can record time periods. The device then works like an advanced computer by organizing the events and storing them in the device for future playback. Now, can you imagine that? It's like a camcorder. What you did in the past is being recorded. Now, here we are today. I can look at something I did 10 years ago or 20 years ago. You can go back and watch this thing, watch some history that you've lived, seeing your children when they were young, or your parents, or reliving an extraordinary event, watching something that you've always wanted to see again. 𝗍𝗑𝗦𝗧𝗧 could do it. 𝗍𝗑𝗧𝗧𝗧's had it. They perfected it. The problem is we couldn't understand the device, nor could we get the device to work like we wanted it to work. We know what he told us, 𝗍𝗑𝗦𝗧𝗧 told us, and we know what we have compared it to. We have US contractors out there biting at the bit, trying to figure out how this thing works. And there's a lot of research and development going on today regarding brains, our brain waves. We know, the United States knows, government knows, medical research have detected that each human being has a unique frequency. Everybody has a different frequency. If that frequency is manipulated by something, it can change the behavior of the human. And this particular situation, it would collect something from the human and record it in some very complex way. Although most aspects of the alien spacecrafts obtained by US scientists are highly classified, some information has leaked out over the years. One particular alien craft found in Nevada was 45 feet in diameter. The entire outer surface of the craft contained an electric charge called a toroid diffused layer. That's what the scientists called it. The craft was polarized and able to change from a neutral charge, either a positive or negative charge, depending on whether the craft is taking off or landing. The craft sends out flux lines to navigate through the atmosphere. That's pretty deep, technically speaking. I don't understand it, I'm not a scientist. But again, there are scientists out there that are looking into this. Again, this isn't classified. This has been reported. Papers have been written by scientists about this. The Institute for Advanced Studies, Dr. Hal Puthoff has written many papers similar to this, trying to explain how these spacecrafts can operate. How they can fly, how can they take off from our atmosphere? I'm just telling you what I know and what has been written about this technology. Again, this is one particular species of ETs that's flying this craft. They're not all the same. Remember that. They're not all the same. Each alien species that have visited Earth are biological, technologically, and physiologically different than each other species. Each alien species that have visited Earth are biologically, technologically, and physiologically different than each other. Therefore, each species require unique environment, nourishment, and garments to survive. One of the species we found requires less oxygen and more methane to survive. Obviously, that particular species comes from a planet that has methane in their atmosphere, and therefore the creature requires a certain amount of methane. I don't know how much methane. One species requires a complex mixture of gases to survive. So they have to have a breathing apparatus. That would mean that if were able to capture that particular species and place it in a visitor's area, so to speak, we would have to create that environment for that species to live. We have such facilities. One species requires more atmosphere pressure to survive. Their planet has a heavier atmosphere. They can't survive on ours because our atmosphere is different than their planet. And one species requires a complex garment to maintain the correct body temperature. EBA-1 had a one-piece suit that he wore that was able to regulate his body temperature. To leave you with this, that we know different species have visited Earth. They're different in all respects. They have different technologies. They built different types of crafts, different propulsion systems. The information I gave you today is regarding some of them. There may be others out there with different technologies, different biologies visiting Earth. I hope you enjoyed this presentation about alien artifacts. Until next time, I'm Richard Doty. Thanks for watching.
If you like this video and you want to see more amazing content, go ahead and check out the next video on our channel.